Today is Thursday, July 30th, and we are here at the HistoryMakers with our intern testimonials. And here we have Brittany Lacy. Brittany, can you please give us a little bit of background information?
Yes, my name is Brittany Lacy, Brittany, Lacy, Lacey. I am a senior at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign campus. My major is broadcast journalism. However, I do not want to be a reporter. I'm more interested in public relations work, and I am pursuing a master's program in human resource management.
Okay, and why did you choose to intern here at the HistoryMakers?
Well, honestly, I was unfamiliar with the HistoryMakers until spring. I would want to say it was March or April, but I believe it was in March when the HistoryMakers came down to my campus in Urbana, and we had a speaker, and that speaker was a HistoryMaker himself, actually Mr. Timmy Black. And he came down and spoke about being Black in Chicago because he has spent most of his life in Chicago, in the Bronzeville neighborhood. He's actually, I believe, in his mid-80s, and he's been in Chicago since the early 1930s, I would like to say. And from that experience, I was inspired for two different reasons. One, because I saw an organization that was interviewing people who looked like me, people who may have had similar stories to the stories that I'm familiar with. And also, it came from a historical perspective. And so it was something that I appreciated. I'm really interested in African American history as well as Chicago life. And I saw that this organization was combining the two things. And I was unfamiliar at the time about the variety or the great diversity is with the HistoryMakers. At that particular time, I just knew about the Chicago aspect. But then when I talked to my grandmother about it and I told her what the program was about and I mentioned the HistoryMakers name, she was familiar with the PBS specials. So then it kind of made everything complete.
Okay. What were your responsibilities this summer?
Well, originally, my title here as an intern is a public relations / marketing fellow. And we received a handbook, and in that handbook, it described what my duties would, be for the summer. However, since the summer has begun, those responsibilities have kind of strayed, and I've had more responsibilities or different responsibilities, but nonetheless, everything was good. So here at the HistoryMakers, my first assignment was to comprise a detailed list of different companies, corporations that traditionally sponsor Black programs. And with that list, those are the companies that we were going to target for sponsorship. Sponsorship is a major way that we can increase our programs throughout the year, and we really do depend on that. So that was my first assignment. Along with that, I had various different tasks to make the office run, I guess, a little bit more smoothly. Administrative things, as well as planning for an event where we thanked our most notable sponsors and supporters.
Okay. How would you say your internship tied into your academic as well as professional interests?
Well, as far as my academic interests and personal interests, as stated, I love learning about African American history. I see its value, I see its worth. And not only do I like to learn about it, I like to expose others. So when I run across someone who is unfamiliar with the organization, I get excited about telling them all about the different things that we have. I can mention the archive, I can mention the evening with programs, I can mention the things that we do in schools, I can mention how we fundraise, I can mention the different handouts, the brochures, sponsorship opportunities. Like, there's so many things that I can mention to get people really excited about what we're doing here. As far as professional, I've grown so much as a person. I've grown so much as to know what's expected in an office environment, what's expected from employers who really want to see you work and really want to see product come out of you. And so with that, I'd say that this experience has overall made me a better rounded individual.
Okay. Tell us something memorable about your experience this summer.
Well, one of the most memorable things that I had direct contact with was, I have two memorable things. One was when Leon Dash came. Like, I think he had a big impact on this office because he was just so forthcoming with his personal life, as well as he was just really engaging. I really enjoyed that experience, as well as other interns did as well. But something that I had directly effect on was the thank you celebration that we had on July 29th. I kind of got thrown into that during the early stages, I would say, because nothing had been done for it. It was just a title and that was it. But I had never, put on a major event in my life, and I kind of did it semi-alone. So seeing that project from beginning to end and seeing it complete in all aspects was really something I could be proud of because, I was there from start to finish.
Okay. What have you learned from this experience?
I've learned that I can work under stress. I've learned that I can, challenge myself. Not only that, but when someone lays out a task in front of me, I've learned how to navigate it and to execute and to complete. I think that is very important when you have something that you have a challenge, that you have a strategy in order to complete that, whatever that given task may be. So I've learned that I can do that, and I've also have developed a more concrete work ethic.
Okay. In your definition, in your own terms, how would you define a history maker?
I think a history maker is a person that leaves an impact. It can be an impact on one individual person, or it can be for the masses. And that person, a positive impact, I would like to say. And with that, they inspire people, they uplift people. A history maker has done something that may be kind of different, offbeat. A history maker is someone who is or who has just made some type of change, some type of betterment of whatever the given situation or circumstance can be, or whatever field that they are in.
Okay. What do you think the value of this project is?
It's really priceless because we have testimonies and great oral traditions in our archives that can be used for various reasons and for various people. So the magnitude of this collection is really, really hard to describe, but that it's really important that people get excited about it and just really try to use the resources that we have here.
And how can the History Makers continue to further its mission?
Well, I think that the History Makers can continue to further its mission by just keeping on the track that they are on right now. Throughout the bad of the economy, just try to keep on keeping on, and not to sound cliche, but just continue to collect stories, continue to be a force in the community, continue to reach out, continue to produce and prosper.
Okay, thank you very much.
That was perfect timing, I guess.
Hello, we are here with Chime Asonye. And Chime, can you please tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. My name is Chime Asonye. That's C-H-I-M-E. Last name A-S-O-N-Y-E. I am a student, a senior at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, studying philosophy and political science.
Okay. Why did you choose to intern here at the History Makers this summer?
Yeah, it was actually, I just finished being a student member of the University of Illinois Board of Trustees, and I heard that the History Makers were going to do an exhibit. And part of the exhibit were two of my African-American colleagues that I just served with on the Board of Trustees, Dr. Francis Carroll and James Montgomery, who's a lawyer. So I went to check out the exhibit, and after getting an invitation, I heard about the HistoryMakers. And at the exhibit, they announced the internship opportunities, and it was just after I saw a wonderful video about the mission of the HistoryMakers, what it was about. I was just like, this is this is really an organization I want to be a part of.
Okay. And what were your responsibilities this summer?
Yeah, I was a research and writing intern or fellow. I primarily did a lot of pre-production work for the people we're going to interview, so potential history makers, doing biographical, genealogical sketches of them so we can do a very proper and informed interview. I also did some work on grants that we're applying for. Obviously, we're a major nonprofit here, so we're always trying to raise funds so we can continue our mission.
And would you say that this internship met your expectations?
Met and exceeded, to be honest. There's so many unsung heroes in the African American community that I learned about, and and none of them are trivial, but they have stories that are just untold. And so just being able to immerse myself in that literature and the community and learning about my own history, I think that it definitely met my expectations. And everybody I was working with here was great. Everybody was passionate about the mission, about the cause, and was really dedicated to working with it. And Juliana Richardson, our executive director, is such an inspiring figure, and she's been at it for a decade. So just to be able to work with her was really, it was really a good time for the summer.
Okay. Tell us something memorable about your experience.
Oh, over the summer, there's so many this is not one memorable moment, but just working in my office, with my colleagues, they were great to be around, from different universities. It was just interesting to hear why they were here or their experience. So that was like kind of an ongoing thing, and they just kept the atmosphere really jovial, and so I really enjoyed it. And I really enjoyed my time with Leon Dash. Leon Josh is a professor at the University of Illinois. He set a record actually for having the longest recorded interview with the HistoryMakers, over 9 hours, I believe. And just to hear his how he goes through interviewing and his interviewing technique, because he was a Washington Post reporter for about 3 decades and worked as a foreign service in Africa, and I'm Nigerian. It was just really interesting hearing about his interview and oral history techniques, and his techniques I want to adopt, and when I start going off and in different anthropological endeavors.
Okay. What have you learned about yourself from this experience?
Well, I learned that my past is intimately woven in America's history. So a lot of times there's a lot of missing stories, and just learning all the remarkable individuals who have gone before me, and looking them as role models. That's one of the most important things, because it's so unfortunately oftentimes these stories go untold.
Okay. What was the most challenging part of the summer for you?
Well, the most challenging part of the summers is really trying to get information on some of the history makers. When you have untold stories, right, you have in major academic works or search engines, et cetera, online, there's just not a lot of information on them, and you're wondering why. Well, especially when you hear their story, how prolific they were, but it's not recorded anywhere. So we want to get their stories, but the way you can get your stories is you have to be prepared. You have to understand their life story. You have to know what kind of context, the historical context in which their story happened in. So that was the biggest thing. There was a challenge of understanding the individual story, but you also have to understand American history and world history, so you understand the type of events that influenced and shaped where they were. For example, baby boomers influenced a generation. Vietnam War influenced a generation. Martin Luther King influenced a generation. So not only did I learn about individual historical actors, but world events in general. So I think that was one of the most interesting times and the hardest times to kind of go through.
Okay. In your own terms, can you please define a history maker?
I would say a history maker is someone who lives at the intersections of history, both past and present. They don't necessarily have to be overcome adversity, but are just take part of it and able to share that story of what happened. Also, I think it's somebody who, you know, goes through conflict and adversity and did something for the African American community, made a breakthrough, etc. But in general, I think a history maker is really somebody who lives at the intersections of past and present, is able to relate a story so, you know, the rest of our community and the rest of America and the world in general can learn from it.
Okay, and from your own personal experience, who would you say is a history maker, and could you describe them?
Sure. I think a history maker for me is Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Now, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was somebody who was actually commended by Laura Bush. So she is the first African American elected head in Africa. She's the first female head of Liberia, and her story is just so interesting. She participated in international development, was jailed for a time, you know, was part of Liberia's gone through civil wars, and then her election actually marked the democracy and the end of the Civil War in Liberia. And her story is just so inspiring for me. The type of glass ceilings that she had to emerge through, and just in terms of, you know, Africa is where our roots are. And I think that, you know, she's just really a history maker and an inspiring figure for me.
Okay. What do you think the value of this project is?
I think that the value of this project is really incommensurable. You can't put a price tag on it. We are documenting an important part of American history, and people don't understand that if we don't have an accurate reflection and testimonials and narratives of different experiences that happened in all facets of society, particularly an often neglected part like the African American community, then we don't have an accurate understanding of the present. And if we don't have an accurate understanding of the present, then we can't make decisions in order to advance our cause. So we really need an accurate history, an accurate conception of what past events were, so we can understand what kind of specific context we are in right now. So I think that's really the value of the product. We understand our present. We understand how we've gotten to where we are. We understand how we should engage for the future. And I think that this story gives us a more accurate reading and a more accurate description of what the past was, so we can better take on the future.
Okay, and how do you think the History Makers can continue to further its legacy?
Well, I think that it can do what it's doing right now. You know, having people like me who are interested in the subject come here and engage and have the public engage the archives. I would like us to reach out, like we're doing now, to different institutions, schools, and universities, so we get the young generation really involved and understanding about it, understanding this. And we also get, you know, major personalities, not only in the African American community, but also in the and also in other types of communities. I think that we should extend our hand, let them know I'm here, and let them know we're here. And when they know we're here, I think that they'll be interested in, you know, committing funds to this important historical enterprise and disseminating these, you know, interviews and these history makers all over the classroom, so we get a new culture and a new generation that is really you know, embody these stories.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chime.
Thank you.
Hi, we are joined with Brittany Moseley. Brittany, can you please spell your first and last name for us?
Hi, my name is Brittany Moseley, BrittaneyMoseley.
Great. For starters, can you please tell us a little bit about your background and where you come from?
Yes, I attend Harvard College. I will be a junior in the fall, and I am an economics concentrator.
Okay. And why did you choose to intern here for the History Makers?
Well, ironically enough, one of my friends at Harvard, she introduced me to the organization and encouraged me to apply. And I basically looked at the job description and then got on the internet and read a little bit about the organization, and immediately I just became fascinated. I have always been committed to public service throughout, ever since I was in kindergarten. I've been a Girl Scout, and so community service has always been something that is very important to me, and obviously African American history is as well. So I just thought that this was the perfect place for me to be. And last year I had interned in finance, and this summer I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I just thought this was the perfect place for me to be.
And what were your responsibilities this summer for the HistoryMakers?
Well, I was actually a marketing and PR intern, but I've mainly been working on PR work. Primarily, I'm working on our and evening with programs, and those are basically our PBS celebrity fundraisers that we have. And I've been working on securing in-kind donations for an evening with Eartha Kitt, as well as an evening with Richard Parsons. I've been working on sending out correspondence for the event, sponsorship, going on site visits. So that's basically what I've been working on.
And can you tell us something that is memorable from your experience this summer?
I would have to say two things. The first thing is definitely working with the other interns here. They have honestly made my summer it's just such a really great group of people. Everyone is nice. We all get along really well. We share stories. We laugh. We get frustrated together. We're always there to help each other out, lend a helping hand. It's just a really, really great work environment. And I guess my other memorable experience would be working with Julie. She can be really hard on you at times, but is always for the better. She knows what she wants. She's driven. She's focused, and just having the chance to be able to work with someone like that who had a dream of wanting to do something, and within the last 8 years it's amounted to a national nonprofit institution, and has done so much for the African American community. Just to be part of this experience has just been amazing.
And what have you learned about yourself from this experience?
What have I learned about myself? I'd say that I've learned that I can get down on myself very quickly, but if I ever want to work in PR or production, I can't do that. Just because on the day-to-day, when you ask for donations, or, people are going to say no, and you have to just move on to the next person and ask. So I've learned that I really need to gain more confidence and just know that in the end, everything will work out. I've also learned that I'm a true perfectionist. I like everything to be done right. I like everything to be done well. And I like to get the job done. So those are probably the two things I'd say that I've learned about myself.
And when you think of the HistoryMakers and their project, what is the value that you see?
This project is invaluable. What they're doing, what we're doing, interviewing these unsung heroes, these people that have had an impact on the African American community, and making this American history. We go into this, we have our education institute, where we're going into these schools and, immersing young children in this African American history, introducing them to HistoryMakers, pairing them up with a mentor, so they can see that there are people, especially African Americans, male and female, that are doing the right things, that have succeeded. That's just invaluable.
And lastly, what is a HistoryMaker to you?
In my opinion, a HistoryMaker is a person who has had a vision, has had a dream, and has pursued that. Whether it be a movement, whether it be founding an organization, they have in some way impacted the community. That's what I'd say.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oh, thank God it's over.
Go ahead.
We are joined today with Jessica Saffold. Jessica, can you please say and spell your first and last name?
It's Jessica, Jessica, Saffold, SA, 2 Fs, OLD.
And Jessica,
Go ahead.
and Jessica, can you please tell us a little bit about your background and where you come from?
Academic-wise, or just in general?
Academic is fine.
Okay. I'm from Chicago. I've lived here my whole life, but I attended college at Amherst College in Massachusetts. A small liberal arts college, 1,700 students. So I'll be a senior there in the fall, next month.
And why did you choose to intern here?
I had previously worked here for 6 weeks in January and, really enjoyed it. I felt like I was doing important work and I was being able to use, different talents. I felt that I was really, for the first time in a job, I was really doing things that I really liked to do, that I felt, passionate about. So I decided to come back for the summer, and then that was it. I was here.
Okay, and what are some of your responsibilities this summer?
Here I was a research and writing intern, which means that I was doing research in preparation for interviews. I was preparing remarks for different speaking engagements. I was doing research for some of our upcoming events and basically doing a lot of the different writing components for a lot of the projects. So it was publicity writing, it was research writing, it was all different types of writing.
And can you please share a most memorable experience that you had this summer?
I think one of my most memorable experiences was probably, I'd have to pick two, which was working with some of the program directors of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, working on their commemorative DVD for their centennial celebration, because I really got it was something that I saw from start to finish. And I left in January and I came back and was able to finish it, which was a really great experience. And then we had an oral history training weekend with Professor Leon Dash from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and he was just a really inspirational person. I think that he really impressed upon a lot of us here. So having him here was a great time.
And what have you learned about yourself from your experience this summer overall?
I learned that I'm capable of more than I thought I was, of juggling more things. I think that at an organization such as this, you have to be able to really juggle things and handle multiple things at once. And that was something that I wasn't very comfortable doing when I came here. I would kind of doubt that I was able to do, multiple things. But I think that, a lot of what we do here is learning as you go. And it's not a comfortable thing for a lot of people to do, but I think that I definitely learned that here, and just learned that I'm capable of more than I, ever really thought I was.
What do you think the value of this project is?
I think that it's valuable for anyone. I think the focus is on African Americans, but as we've had a lot of people say to us, it's for anyone. I think anybody can see the value in it. I think it's because it gives African Americans the chance to become not this monolithic thing, but more of like a mosaic of different people and experiences and things, to show that we're not one thing or another thing. There's a vast range of experiences in African American history and things that are being created now, and I think that we have a real opportunity here to capture that and to keep it current while also documenting the past.
And in your opinion, what is a history maker?
Well, we always say that, a history maker is someone who has a unique take on history, and, I think that our founder really looks for the history that resides within people, but I think that also a history maker doesn't have to be someone who, is well known or someone who everybody recognizes when they walk down the street. I think that there's lots of people hiding out who are history makers. I can think of, some teachers that I've had, or, people who have really made an impression. I think it's anybody. A history maker is someone who does have a unique take on history, but I think it should also be someone who has an impact on the history in terms of the lives of other people. I think that if you're not interacting with people, you're not, able to change people and inspire people. I think that's a big part of being a history maker.
And who would you like to see be a history maker?
Well, I mentioned some. I definitely think that we do have a focus on education here. We do have a lot of education makers, as we say, but there have just been so many people who, I think in my life specifically, who have been, really, I can think of like a couple of my teachers, but I would really also like to see more of, we interviewed Terry McMillan, and I watched her interview, and that was one of my favorite interviews that I watched. I think that she's like just a real character, and she had a real interesting story. So I think that I can't pinpoint anyone right now, but as an English major, I would really like to see more people in the literary profession, because I think that, I think that that's important. I think that's a way that a lot of people learn, and that, that writers are some of the most creative, the best creators.